is up, guys? It is a month and a half, maybe if not more, until Christmas, and that means I need to get a head start on making Christmas gifts. Because what is art if not taking time? So I have this really cool frame which does not fit on my desk, which is why I'm currently on the floor, and it's really cool. I like it, and the plan is to replace this drawing with a drawing and maybe watercolor painting of my own. I have some Bristol paper, which is 19 by 24. That is, however, bigger than what it seems like I have space for in this frame, but fear not, because X-Acto knives exist and I will be cutting down this paper to size. So I'm gonna start with opening the frame and seeing what's going on. So I have dissected the frame. There was a lot more cardboard than I was expecting, so it kind of does change up a bit of what I was thinking, but this is essentially the picture and it's attached onto another piece of cardboard. So what I'm thinking is I will cut out the Bristol paper to this size, and then I will quickly just do a light tracing just to make sure that I have it actually where it's supposed to be, so I know where the center is, and I will cut the paper and start some drawing. In a complete turn of events, I remembered I owned a smaller pad of Bristol paper, and this is quite literally the perfect size for this cardboard, and this is a 14 by 17 inch piece of paper, so I will be using this instead. So I have a very light sketch going. I'm gonna go in and refine it with pencil, and I'm thinking I will be doing the body in ink, but I will be saving the dress and doing that possibly in watercolor. That way I get a really nice bright pop of color, and I think it'll complement it really well. So I'm gonna keep on drawing. So this is how we're looking. I really like the look of it so far. I think I actually will be using some pencil and not just ink. I am kind of changing my mind about the dress and using watercolor though, because of the type of paper that I'm using. Okay, so quick note on paper. I am by no means an expert. This is just what I know. So the paper that I'm using is Bristol paper with a vellum surface, and it's 100-pound paper, or 270 grams per meter squared, basically the weight of the paper. And I really like this paper. It's great for pencil, it's great for ink, which is mainly what I use it for. However, again, I was thinking of doing the dress in watercolor, and then I started thinking, maybe this isn't the paper for that. Watercolor paper, it's a little bit heavier, usually like 140 pounds paper, or if not a little bit more. But also another thing is just the surface. This is a vellum surface, and basically what that means is that there's very little like texture going on in the paper. You can't really see it, but there's not a lot of tooth or anything like that. And that's great if you're doing like pencil or ink. It's a little bit different for watercolor though. I personally like having a little bit of tooth, a little bit of texture. It just holds the paint a little bit differently, so that's like my main concern. So I brought out my handy dandy little guide. Basically, like I said, great for pencil, great for ink, great for charcoal, but not the most ideal for very heavy washes, which is what I would need to get the color that I want. Bristol paper like this could maybe do with a few light washes, and that's pretty much it. So that does change the game plan a little bit, because the last thing I want is to finish the body and then move on to the actual dress and then have it sort of like warp. So I will continue doing the face in graphite as well as including some ink, but I will be doing the body, the actual dress, in color pencil with maybe a light wash or two of watercolor on top. I do have some scrap piece of paper of this same type of paper somewhere. I need to look for it. So I will test out how much water the paper can actually withstand, as well as what watercolor might look like if I do layer it on top of the color pencil. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna keep going with the graphite first and then introduce some ink. So this is what we're looking like so far. I pretty much have all the ink work done, and what's left now is the dress. And I'm thinking of also doing ink on the dress, but I do want to do that after the color pencil. So I'm gonna start doing that. I have 3 different colors. I have crimson red, then dark brown, and a Tuscan red. So in the very light bits of the dress, it's kind of like a velvety texture. So pretty much the border of it is only going to be red. And the middle part is going to be like a dark red, brownish kind of color. But I do want to lay down the crimson red underneath all of it, just to make sure like it's still giving very like vivid. And it's just a nicer like foundation, so that I can blend the brown and the Tuscan red into. So I'm using the Prismacolor Premier. So I'm using the Prismacolor Premier, and then the other 2 are Prismacolors as well. They're just like a different kind of Prismacolor. There we go. So yeah, the dark brown and then the Tuscan red. So that is the next step. Let's keep going. Alright, so this is what we're looking like so far, and I really love it. I did a lot of layering with the color pencil to get some of a bright red on the sides, but also like a cooler red to kind of mimic the vibe of what velvet does. And I really like how it turned out, but I feel like something is missing, and I think I am going to do a wash or 2 of watercolor on top of the color pencil. I'm gonna start with 1 and see how it goes. So I kind of did a tiny little test to see what I would like, because I do have a few different options. I have this watercolor pen, and it wasn't bad, but it does kind of overpower. So that's the watercolor pen. It does kind of overpower a lot of the color pencil, which I wasn't a fan of. And then I went ahead and watered it down to see what that would look like. But unfortunately, for some reason, it started like picking up the color pencil, and I don't know what that's about. But the last thing I want to do is add watercolor on top and then have it take away the color that I already had put down. So then we moved on to this alizarin watercolor that I had, which I do like. I think it's got a very nice warmth to it, and it doesn't overpower the color pencil as much. Like, you could still see the different tones going on. And then I have this really amazing watercolor paint, but it's been a while since I've used it, and I completely forgot how pigmented it was. So as you can see, that just like completely, overwhelmed the color pencil underneath. Like, you could still see some of it going on, but it's a little bit too dark for what I want to do. So then I did that same watercolor, but watering it down a lot more, and that definitely helped. I also did a few like very thinned out layers of that color, and I do like how it looks. It's a bit more of a cooler tone red than the alizarin, which I do like, and I think it would be really nice in particular for this area here that's a bit more in shadow and it's a bit more cooler. The one thing that I did notice when I was doing that watered down version is that after about like 3-ish layers of water, it does start getting this like texture to it. It is like, it's very subtle. You can't really see it unless you're like literally like staring right at it. And then I did like a little square test just to like double check what I was seeing. And there is a very like slight texture. It's not the biggest deal in the world. It's just so I know, okay, I get like maybe 3-ish layers before I start getting into possibly some texture going on. But it held up pretty nicely. So what to do now? I'm thinking I will do the alizarin, which is the warmer red, on these outer bits that are already a warmer red. And then I will use the other watercolor, the 425, on this part. And a moment for the watercolor, because I don't use watercolor often. I think I've only maybe showed one painting on here that I've done with watercolor, but it is, despite the fact that I don't use it very frequently, it is one of my favorite mediums to work with ever. Ever. I learned how to paint with watercolors. The way I paint with acrylic is influenced by the fact that I learned how to paint with watercolor. I love these watercolors. Not sponsored, by the way, but if they would. This is like a Korean watercolor. It's Shinhan, and the way these are just so pigmented, like a little goes an extremely long way, and they are just absolutely amazing, and I love these down. So I will be doing that now, and besides that, I think I'm pretty much done. I'm like debating whether I want to go back in with the ink and add a little more shadow here, just because I feel like it's a little light, but I think I'm gonna hold off on that and wait to see what it looks like afterwards with the watercolor. I don't know, maybe like I might change my mind. But yeah. Okay, so I layered it with watercolor. I ended up doing a little bit less layers than I was thinking of doing. I was thinking maybe like 3 or even 4. I ended up doing 1 for the alizarin, so the really red parts on the outside, and I did 2 of the 425 on the middle. And then some areas I did go over it one more time, but just very small spots like here. I didn't want to push it too much. There was a little bit more warping than I was expecting. I knew because it was such a large area and the amount of water you need to cover such a large area, I knew that there was going to be more warping than what I initially tested. but it was still a little bit more than I was expecting, so I just didn't want to push it too much. Luckily you can't really tell. I think now that I've let it dry, it's kind of back to normal a little bit more, but I just don't want to push it with any more layers of watercolor. I did go back a little bit more with the color pencil, and I think it looks really nice. I think it's a very subtle difference. Maybe you guys can't tell, but I feel like in person, or at least to me, I can tell, and that's what matters. I also did end up going a little bit in with ink just here, very lightly on the arm, just because I felt like it was getting kind of lost. And then a little bit in these like darker areas that I just felt needed to be pushed slightly more. So now that this is done, it is time to put it back into the frame. Right, so there was a tiny incident. I'm very clumsy. I dropped something on it, so there is a tiny little dent, which is unfortunate in so many ways, and there's no fixing that. But you know, it's done. It is what it is. Life goes on. So here is the framed painting. This is a huge frame, and it's also kind of heavy. So, but doesn't it look so cool? I love how it came out, and the frame is so fun. I don't really have a lot of framed artwork. I don't buy frames, but this is a frame that we happen to have, that we got from somebody else, and I think what a great use. So there is a tiny little dent. I don't know if you guys can see it on camera. I can see it, and it's unfortunate. If the light is hitting it like this, oh well, yeah. Oh well. Painting! That is one Christmas gift done. On to the next.